I stopped walking because there were 2 feet in the dirt in front of mine. They weren't mine. I looked up slowly. I couldn't make out a face. I didn't wait to. I ran. That happened the night we buried my grandfather, and I've been trying to explain it ever since. I ran until I saw my elder sister. Just the sight of her. That's all it took. I wasn't even close enough to touch her yet, and something in me released, in the way a held breath releases. I remember the specific relief of seeing a face I knew, someone who had been in that house, someone who had known him, someone who was still here. I didn't look back at the path, not once. I know how this sounds. Grief does things. Exhaustion does things. A mind that's been inside mourning for days can produce shapes in the dark. I know all of that. I'm telling you this story anyway. Because the rational explanation covers almost everything. Almost. To understand what I saw, you need to understand who I lost and how I lost him. My grandfather had a chair. You know how some people have a chair, the specific one, so completely theirs that the whole family unconsciously leaves it empty even when the room is full. That was his. Every morning, before anything else moved in the house, before anyone else was awake. He was already there, coffee held in both hands, eyes on whatever the window was offering, just watching the world like it was worth watching. I used to think that was boring when I was young, the patience of it, the stillness. I understand it now in a way I can't quite put into words. The way you only understand certain things after the person who embodied them is gone, and you'd give anything to sit beside them in that silence again. He had presence, not loudness, presence. The kind that fills a room without trying and empties it when it leaves. That chair sat empty for a long time after he died. I don't think anyone talked about it. We just all knew not to sit in it. There was one evening I walked past it in the dark, and for 1 second, just one, I thought I saw the outline of someone in it. The room was empty. I stood there for longer than I should have. He got sick quickly. Not the long kind of sick that gives you a runway to prepare. The fast kind. The kind where 1 week he was himself, and a few weeks later, the illness had made something else instead. There's a specific kind of grief that starts before the death. I didn't know about that kind before this. You're sitting in a room with someone who is still alive, and you are already grieving them. Because what is in front of you and what you're losing, they're not quite the same person anymore. The illness was doing its work, and all you can do is show up and watch it. His body had grown thinner, not just lighter, subtracted, like something essential was being quietly removed from the inside. His voice was almost gone, and that hit me harder than anything else because his voice had always been so specifically his. The weight of it, the particular rhythm, and now it was nearly not there. My heart would sink every time I walked in to visit, not because I didn't want to be there, because I loved him, because I wanted to be there. But love doesn't make it easier to watch. Sometimes love makes it harder. There was something else, something I've never been able to fully explain. A few times during those visits, when the room was quiet and everyone was just sitting with him, I had this feeling, difficult to name, like something in that room was paying attention, not to all of us, just present, watching. I told myself it was the weight of grief doing what grief does. I'm less certain of that now. There was one visit I carried differently from the others. The family was there, my father, his siblings, the people who had known him longest and had the most to lose. And he wanted to say something. You could see it. That's the detail that lives in me. You could see the wanting. Whatever was in him, it was pressing forward. His mouth moved. That his eyes held that particular intensity. The one that means something behind them is trying urgently to reach the surface. But the words didn't come. Whatever he needed to say stayed inside him. All of us in that room. All of us watching. And not one of us could reach in and get it for him. I couldn't hold his gaze in that moment. I want to be honest about that. I was too overwhelmed. It's the distance between who he had been and what I was seeing. I couldn't hold both things at once and look him in the eyes while I did it. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I held his hand. It felt lighter than I remembered. I held his hand and neither of us said anything. Words had failed both of us at the same moment. He died with something unsaid. I have never stopped wondering what it was. When he died, I felt two things at the same time. And I've never been entirely sure I was allowed to feel both of them. The first was grief. Straightforward, physical, ambushing grief. The kind that hits you when you're fine, and then suddenly you're not. And the gap between those two states is about half a second. The second feeling was relief. I know how that word sits in this context, but I'm not going to soften it. I had watched him suffer. Nay, I had sat in that room and seen what the illness was doing and kept doing. And when it was finally over, part of me breathed out. Something that had been pulled tight for weeks just released. If you have ever lost someone to illness, even a brief one that was brutal, you might know this feeling, the terrible arithmetic of it. Sadness and relief living in the same chest without canceling each other out. It doesn't mean you wanted them gone, and it means you loved them enough to not want them to suffer. Those are different things. I'm telling you this because it matters for what happened that night. Because I've wondered, sitting with it over the years, whether that relief was somehow part of it, whether whatever found me in the dark was connected to that exhale, like something was responding to it. There is a specific atmosphere inside a house where someone has just died. If you have been in one, you know it immediately. The air is different, heavier. People move more carefully, like everyone has silently agreed to be gentle with the space. Food appeared constantly. Tea was made endlessly. The nights were the worst. During the day there was noise, movement, roles to play. Grief has a social function, and the function keeps you occupied. But at night, the house settled. The visitors thinned. And what remained was just the fact of it, the absence. Sitting in every room it had ever occupied. Those nights had a sound, not noise, sound. The particular sound of a house holding something it doesn't know how to release. Creaks that had always been there, but now meant something different. Silence in rooms that used to have him in them. And dogs. The neighborhood dogs barked every night during that period. All of them, together, at nothing visible. People said it was normal. Dogs sense things, they said. The disruption of routine. Maybe. Yes, but on the night I'm telling you about, the night I went outside, they had stopped. All of them. At the same time. I didn't notice that until later. The silence where the barking had been. I've thought about what that means. I still don't have a clean answer. It was the second or third night. Grief compresses time. I can't be precise about which, but it was late. Most people were asleep or trying to be. I needed to move. That animal impulse that doesn't come with a reason, just with force. So I went outside, and here is the detail I've left out every other time I've told this story. The thing I was thinking about. Right before I went outside, I was sitting inside and I was thinking about that visit. The room, his mouth moving with something he needed to say, his hand in mine. I was thinking, I hope he knew. I hope he felt it even if the words never made it out. I hope the hand said it. I hope the showing up said it. That was the thought I was carrying when I walked outside. I'm outside, walking with my head down. The particular dark of a family compound at night. You know the paths by feel, your feet don't need your eyes. I'm thinking about his hand, about the room, about his mouth moving with something that didn't arrive, about what I hope he felt even if the words didn't come. And then I stop walking, not gradually, not a slow deceleration. Stopped, like a hand pressed flat against my chest, 2 feet, in the dirt, right there in front of mine, not mine. Close enough that one more step and I would have hit them. I look up slowly, dark enough that my eyes are assembling something from almost nothing, shapes forming, shapes dissolving. There is a figure, completely still, too still for someone who had just walked there. I can't make out a face. The dark has taken the face. But the shape is present the way something real is present, not a shadow, not the dark playing tricks on tired eyes. Something occupying space, something there. And then, and I have never told anyone this part, the air changed. Not temperature, not wind, something else. The way the air changes when you walk into a room where 2 people have just stopped talking. That specific quality of interrupted presence. It lasted about 3 seconds. And in those 3 seconds, I want to be precise about this because I've replayed it 1,000 times. The figure didn't move, didn't shift weight, didn't breathe visibly, didn't react to me standing there. It just waited, like it had been waiting before I arrived, like it would still be waiting after I left. Then I ran. I was young and I was terrified, and my body made the decision before my mind had even formed the question. I just ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I ran until I saw my elder sister, just the sight of her. That was all it took. I wasn't close enough to reach her yet, and something in me had already released. I remember exactly what that felt like, the specific relief of a familiar face. Someone who had been in that house, someone who had known him, someone who was still here. I know how this sounds. I thought I was being paranoid. Nay, I thought grief does things to a mind, and this was just one of those things. I told someone, one of the few people still awake, sitting in the kitchen the way people sit in kitchens during those nights, not sleeping. Just occupying a chair because lying down feels like giving up on something. They heard me out. Then they said, "You're grieving, you're exhausted. Go and sleep, kindly." I want to be clear about that. It wasn't dismissal. It was the most loving, rational response available. Here is an explanation that protects you. Take it. I told 2 other people. Both said versions of the same thing, and I tried to believe them. For a while I told myself I did, but here is what nobody tells you about a physical experience. Your mind can be persuaded. Your mind is excellent at building comfortable explanations. It has been doing that your entire life. Your body is different. Your body just holds what happened. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't accept revised versions. It keeps the original record. And my body did not want to be in the dark near that part of the compound for a long time afterward. That's not nothing. Here is the sequence. I want to say it plainly, without drama, because the sequence is dramatic enough on its own. He spent his final days with something to say that he couldn't say. I sat in that room with him, and I held his hand while his mouth moved without words. He died with it still inside him. On the night of his burial, I went outside thinking about exactly that. Thinking, I hope he knew. I hope what I couldn't say reached him somehow. I hope the hand said it, and something stopped me in the dark. I don't know what was standing there. I've never known. But the question I can't stop sitting with, the one that keeps me up at 2 in the morning sometimes, and years later, is this. What if the words he couldn't say when he was alive found another way out? I still don't have an explanation. The rational version is always available. Grief, exhaustion, a mind desperate for one more moment of someone it loved, fulfilling an absence with a shape it recognized. I can't rule that out, but I keep coming back to the sequence, the thought I was carrying, the figure that was there, the feet that were not mine. And I keep coming back to that room, the visit, the family, his mouth moving with something urgent that the illness would not let him release. Whatever it was, it stayed in him. He carried it all the way to the end. And then, on the night we put him in the ground, something stood in the dark in front of me. I don't know if what I saw was him. I don't know if that's even a sentence that means anything. What I know is that I ran until I found my sister. And when I saw her face, when I saw someone who had known him, who had sat in that room, who had watched the same man disappear, something in me stopped running. I've thought about that for a long time. Why her face specifically? Why familiar? Why someone who had loved him too? There is one more thing. Something I noticed the next morning that I have no explanation for. The dirt on that path, where I had stopped walking. There were footprints, mine, going toward that spot. Ew, and then mine again, going back fast, the ones from running. But in between, in the space where the figure had been standing, the dirt was undisturbed. No prints going in, no prints going out. Whatever was standing there, it hadn't walked there. I stood looking at that patch of undisturbed dirt for a long time. The morning light was coming up. Everyone else was still asleep. It was just me and that path, and the gap in the footprints where something had been. I didn't tell anyone about the footprints, not because I was afraid of not being believed. I already knew how that went. But because some part of me didn't want it explained away. Didn't want someone to find the logical reason and hand it to me like a gift. Whatever was in that gap, I wanted to keep it. I've thought about that for a long time too. He spent his last days trying to say something he couldn't say. Maybe he finished the sentence, just not with words.